Dinner's ready. G-tramp is a word that I'm gonna gamble most people don't really know about. G-tramp is the abbreviated name for the relatively underground sport of garden trampolining. And it's ridiculous. Yes! But the stuff these kids are doing is nuts. With famous YouTubers, big competitions, and arguably it helps spawn a billion-dollar industry. In today's video, we're going to explore how the hell this all happened. And it all begins with the Alaskan tradition of Nalukatag. Back in the 1850s, a tradition started that at the end of the whaling season, Inuits would get a walrus skin and just start pinging their mates in the air. You would literally just have a ring of lads holding this stretched out skin, and some sorry prick would go in the middle and just be launched in the air. Not long after that, in 1887, we would see what were called live nets, which were invented by firefighters to catch people jumping out of burning buildings. And all this would lead us to 1936. George Neeson, a gymnast and diving competitor, and his mate Larry Griswold.
The wonderful Larry Griswold.
These two built what would go on to be recognised as the first ever modern trampoline, and they built it in the University of Iowa. The first use of the trampoline was used to aid the war effort. They would get pilots and navigators and just fling them around on a trampoline in a hope that they would learn some spatial awareness. And then after the war, the trampoline would be used for a similar purpose for astronauts. But you see, George could see more for the future of the trusty old trampoline. This thing was too good to be limited to just astronauts and pilots. Just as a side note, by the way, George Neeson was like a mad lad. He once hauled one of his trampolines to the top of the pyramids and started doing flips on it. He also once went on it with a kangaroo, and reportedly the kangaroo kept kicking him, but George wanted to get a good photo, so he just put up with it. Anyway, whilst this was all happening, the people that you would most associate with trampolines, kids, had yet to experience the joy of jumping on a trampoline with a belly full of Haribos and throwing up everywhere. But that would all change around 1959 to 1960, where we would see the world's first trampoline parks. Before we go any further, today's sponsor is BOTB, the Dream Car Competition Company. Have you ever wanted to own a car like this? Or like this? Or this? Well, you could win one of these cars, or one of 180 different cars, for as little as 45 pence. BOTB give away 2 dream cars every single week to 2 lucky winners. And you could be next. And if that is somehow not enough, you could also win £50,000 in the boot of the car. BOTB are a well-established company. They've been around since 1999. And to date have given away $44 million worth of cars, which have been driven away by over 600 lucky winners. On top of cars, they also do a weekly lifestyle competition, offering motorbikes, luxury watches, holidays, and the latest tech. The Dream Car competition itself runs weekly from midnight Sunday to Sunday, and the midweek competition runs weekly from midnight Wednesday to Wednesday. It's fun, very simple, and the competition is open to everyone over the age of 18. In order to win, be sure to enter now, and if you do win, let me know. I definitely want to know that. Anyway, I'm off now to go play for a Porsche. Wish me luck. These parks became a bit of a fad in America, and it would last all the way up until about the 70s, as more and more reports came out of kids really seriously hurting themselves. And so trampoline parks very quickly died. Probably not the best use of that word. However, this didn't really matter, because by 1962, trampolining was recognised as an official sport. The International Gymnastics Federation loved trampolining, but it would take 64 years before the Olympics would ever accept the trampoline. But finally, in the year 2000, our boy George Neeson, age 86, would be alive to witness, teary-eyed, his invention of the trampoline at the Sydney Olympics in 2000. From the 2000s onwards, all of the Olympics would feature trampolining, and the skill level was rising, and the world was blown away by what we saw these Olympic trampolinists do. However, it was around this same time, in the early 2000s, where people started to notice that trampolines were popping up in people's gardens. Prior to the 2000s, they weren't sold like that. In fact, John Lewis reports that their sales in 2005 of garden trampolines tripled. These garden trampolines would cost anywhere between about £100 to roughly £500. They were obviously heavily nerfed compared to the versions that we'd see in the Olympics. And then everything would change with the release of one video. May 22nd, 2009. A video titled Tramp Sickness Triple Front Before Loop Edit. The video starts and you see these three lads who I'm gonna guess were like 13 years old, cruising around their skateboards and wearing t-shirts that were designed for people with morbid obesity. Anyway, diabolical fashion choice aside, the video would start and we would see a kid doing a double flip, followed by a layout to backflip. These kids were casually sending double flips on a garden trampoline that was deliberately nerfed so they shouldn't be able to do that. But there they were, just doing it like it was nothing. Now these lads were actually skiers, and when there wasn't any snow and it wasn't skiing season, they would just use a trampoline to basically get them better at doing flips for skiing. And on top of them doing triple flips, we would see something really interesting. If you look close enough, you'll notice that there's always someone else on the trampoline. And although it's hard to properly see this as the clips are cut really tightly together, you'll notice that they're always jumping with the guy who does the flip. And this is called a double bounce. Now, if you've ever stepped foot on a trampoline, you'll have no doubt experienced a double bounce, where you're happily bouncing around, having a merry old time, then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you get legged off the trampoline. And that right there is the double bounce, where basically you absorb the other people on the trampoline's bounce into one big super bounce and you went flying. But you see, if you were smart, like these kids, you would have realized that instead of landing on your face, you could have done a double backflip. Okay, maybe I'm underestimating how hard a double backflip is, but nonetheless, it would give enough height to someone who could do a double backflip. But anyway, we'll pick up on the double bounce a bit later. After these two videos, we would actually never really see much more trampolining from these guys. But it didn't really matter. They had done enough to inspire a very select few amount of kids to start attempting double flips on their garden trampoline. In that same year of 2009, one channel would come along and completely change the course of garden trampolining. That channel being Extreme Flippers. You're gonna have to get used to slightly bad names in this video. These young lads from Sweden were also doing double flips on their garden trampoline. And you would see the start of throwing cushions down to let them attempt harder flips that otherwise would hurt. Over the course of that year, we would see them continuously upload videos of their progression. That was until May 7th, 2010, where we would see one of them throw a triple backflip. I know I shouldn't laugh, but it is kind of hilarious seeing this kid in agony while simultaneously being over the moon that he just landed a triple. Maybe I'm just sick. Throughout the early 2010s, their channel would continue to grow, and Extreme Flippers would become recognized as like the pioneers of G-tramp. Yeah, by about this point, they started calling it G-tramp because garden trampolining just got a bit long to say. By 2015, they had reached the milestone of 100,000 subscribers. And they had not only grew themselves, but helped birth an entire community of what are now known as flippers. I don't know who came up with the name flippers. I'll let them have it. But there would be one flipper who would come along and completely put Gtramp on the map. And his name is Tanner Braungardt.
Guys. Oh my god, it's Tanner Braungardt. Hey,
I watch your videos.
I went up to the window, I thought it was.
Now a lot of these G-trampers, I'm sorry, flippers, were Europeans, like Swedes and Danes. But Tanner was from Kansas, USA. And you know, he would start out like most trampoline kids, posting their montages to YouTube. But as time would pass, Tanner would start to make more YouTube-y content. And in 2016, Tanner would absolutely blow up.
And today we're going to be going over my goals for 2016, and those goals include 3,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of 2016.
Hey Tanner, look, you hit 70K.
Oh yeah.
4,
2. It's gonna rock it right now.
going from 2,000 subscribers at the start of the year to ending the year with 1 million subscribers. And with that, he would bring the world of Gtramp to another level. And he arguably made Gtramp a semi-mainstream thing. Now, his channel didn't solely focus on Gtramp. As I said, he made the kind of YouTubey content that was really popular around 2016. But his trampoline videos would always do really well and would completely elevate Gtramp and elevate the idea of flippers. But just before then, between 2012 and 2015, there was a flipper by the name of Rasmus Braungardt, who is largely accredited to be the person who completely pushed the skill level of Gtramp. So by the time that Tanner blew up in 2016, there was kind of a perfect storm brewing. The skill level was insane and the popularity was higher than it had ever been before, leading to 2016 to 2017 kind of being seen as the golden years of Gtramp. Because everything was exciting. People were doing insane flips. People were becoming famous online. There were big meetups, there were competitions. We'd see Air Games 2017. And the start of the GT games. Now, the GT games are quite important. They were started by an ex-trampolinist turned G-tramper called Greg Rowe. Greg is largely accredited as being the person who brought professionality to G-tramp. By pushing G-tramp competitions, he got the sport recognized by Olympians and gymnastic trampolinists, as well bringing sponsors from trampoline companies. And it was in this era that G-tramp on Instagram really started to pop. Hashtag flipping feed, hashtag G-tramp. So it would only be a matter of time before someone would recognize that there was potential to make a bit of money. In steps trampoline parks.
Ah! Go!
Go to the corner.
Why?
Go to the corner.
Why?
Go to the corner.
Why?
Because I told you so.
Why?
These nightmarish, sweaty hellscapes of rabid children overdosing on sugar. Now, trampoline parks were no new idea. As I mentioned, they started around the 50s. However, a man by the name of Jeff Platt blew the dust off the long-dead concept of trampoline parks. In 2004, Jeff opened Sky Mania, and it was a hit. His business grew and he opened up more parks. We'd see these elaborately connected trampolines with games like dodgeball and just areas to kind of mess around. And this was a rather well-timed sequence of events. Jeff Platt and his trampoline park business caught the rise of interest in trampolining in general at the perfect time. He was able to ride the initial wave in the 2000s of the garden trampoline all the way up to the explosion in Gtramp in 2017. And it's really interesting if you look at the Google search results. If you look at trampoline park and then put Tanner Braungardt, the peak in popularity is pretty much the same years. I have very little doubt that Tanner and all these YouTubers helped spark this interest in trampolining, which has now grown into a billion-dollar industry. Anyway, the culture of flippers was getting popular in its own right on YouTube and Instagram.
Yeah, he goes. Oh!
You would see videos from people like Jack and Bailey Payne, Flip Like Z, Tanner, Jesse Heffels, and many more. A lot of these people were G-trampers, but it kind of got a bit blended, with a mix of tumbling, tricking, people who just like flipping into water, gymnasts, and all of that kind of thing. And because G-tramp was closely linked to that world, we would see a massive boom in popularity. And as for the cool kids who had been doing it way before it was popular, they had now been doing this for 6 or 7 years, and had gotten insanely sick at it. With the skill level being constantly raised. And in recent years, the sport had kind of been split into 2 different categories. Those categories being double bounce and no double bounce. I'm not quite sure if people see it as 2 different sports. More so, I think it's a difficulty rating, because whenever someone does a world's first, it's always done under the understanding of whether it was double bounce or no double bounce. No double bounce being obviously harder because it only relies on your power, but double bounce would allow for insane amounts of flips. In this video, I did want to list all of the most important world's firsts, but there are literally so many. So many, in fact, that the person who helped me write this video has made 2 separate Instagram accounts dedicated to world's firsts. So go check them out, but for now, I'm gonna give you some of my favorites. We're gonna start off with an oldie here. So this is from Rasmus Braungardt. This is when he first landed a quad backflip Next one's from Nick Caswell. So in 2019, he landed what's called a 4-4 front flip, meaning that he did a quad front flip and then another quad front flip. So we got one called a chiller, which I don't really know why it's called a chiller, which by the looks of it is 2 backflips and 6 twists. This one's ridiculous. So this is the world's first quint front flip, which was actually landed, and it was done by Gtramp in 2021. Next one is the world's first kaboom full Rudy times quad Benny. I don't know who comes up with these names. That is a mouthful. Personally, I'm more of a fan of like twists. Obviously, the backflips are really cool, and that is what a lot of them do, but you know, I'm a twisty boy. So this is the world's first Miller in dub Cody landed. This one is the first front flip full Rudy times triple. But then there is one world's first that just is probably the most insane thing I might have ever seen, which happened in July 2020. That being the octuple kaboom by Gtramp. This lad is arguably one of the best at what is called super tramp. Him doing the octuple was like on newspapers. It was that big of a deal because he was the first on earth to do this. You might have actually seen Ernest before because there was that really viral meme of him doing the septuple, which is 7 flips. And he's part of this team called Radial Flips, who very proudly represent the UK. And these guys are like sponsored by a trampoline company called Berg Toys, which to me sounds like a pretty big deal, especially as they're young lads in a sport that isn't like super organized like a mainstream one. But it does seem like it's getting there. The GTG Games is still going strong. The 2021 event literally just happened. There's been quite a few cool exhibition things. Jesse Heffels and DD Squad were part of this like crazy bridge that was made for just trampolines in Slovenia. And there's been a bunch of other cool things as well.
Oh my god.
But I know what some of you are thinking, especially if you're a mum or a dad or something like that. You're probably wondering, do people get hurt? The short answer is yes. Trampolines are, of course, dangerous, or at least they can be. People have broken bones, they've broken their necks. It carries risk, but I would say so does literally every sport. Rugby, football, boxing. Hell, my mate broke his foot playing badminton the other week. Every sport runs a risk of hurting yourself. And I'm not gonna lie and say a kid doing 8 backflips in his garden isn't dangerous. But I think it's really important to understand and respect just how much work these kids put into being safe at it. They know how to bail properly, and they've been doing it for years. They push at a safe rate. Oh, and you might also be wondering, how does G-tramp differ from gymnastics trampolining? And that has a really simple answer. Rules. Now, I've made a number of videos lately sort of criticizing gymnastics, so to avoid sounding like a broken record, in short, gymnastics trampolining has a ton of rules. I mean, just look at this website that lists some of the rules. And a lot of these youngsters don't really want to learn trampolining the way that gymnastics teaches it. And from my understanding, if you see trampolining in the Olympics, you're probably not going to see a quad. It's very rare to see quads or even triples. And just bear in mind that Ernest is doing double that. As well, a big part of G-tramp is landing on your stomach and your back. And again, I'm not certain of the rules of gymnastics trampolining, but you don't really see them do that. Oh, and obviously you can't double bounce. I do find it kind of interesting how elements of gymnastics trampolining has kind of come over to the world of G-tramp. Nowadays, it's not uncommon to see what's called a Euro tramp, or also known as a super tramp. And I suppose that super tramp is technically a deviation away from G-tramping. It's these Euro trampolines that are used in gymnastics and allow people like radial flips to do the ridiculous amounts of flips they do. But despite the rise of Euro tramps, there are purists who do stick to garden trampolines. And there have been even further deviations from G-tramp with the introduction of wall tramp. Actually, if you want me to make a video on wall trampolining, comment below. As for G-tramp though, I'm gonna continue to watch it. I'm really interested to see where this ends up. Will it be like a pro sport with competitions, or will it stay as an underground sport? I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. And to think, it all started with some lads hucking their mate with a walrus skin. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We've got new merch out on the Jimmy the Giant website. You can massively help support the channel by picking something up there, supporting me on Patreon, or using the sponsor link below. Peace.